Hey, what's going on? Philip Sayce here. I'm super happy to be here today with Mako for Talkin Blues. We're going to have some fun.
How are things in? Are you in LA? Is that where you are?
Yeah, it's a zoo out there. It's just, I don't know what else to say, my friend. And are you in Toronto?
I am. The old
Yeah.
stomping ground.
Well, but I understand that things are still pretty locked down, but you're going to have some openings happening soon. Is that right?
As of tomorrow, I believe we're in the gray zone, whatever that means. We still can't go out to restaurants and to movies, and we still can't get haircuts, but things are opening up a little bit. Well, hopefully, and it will continue to do so. But there's concern because of the, because of what's going on in the variants. You just wonder if it's going to be. Hopefully, we don't have to lock down again. That's the major thing.
I'm with you. I hope that we don't as well. And we've seen certainly some curious activity from certain states this week, which is, I mean, people are at the end of their wits. They've just got no patience left, and it's totally, in some ways, understandable. In other ways, it's really, really terrifying to say that, hey, we're 100% open and no masks and let's go for it. I think it's a bit scary.
As a Canadian, and is it correct to assume that you consider yourself a Canadian?
Yeah, actually, I have three. I have three access to three passports, so I'm extremely grateful for that.
It's Irish, Canadian, and American. Is that the way it would work? Is that the three?
Right. So, I was born in Wales, so the UK, and then I was raised in Canada as a Canadian, and then the US as well. So, yeah, all
Wow.
three. But was raised in Canada, so my roots are definitely Canadian and British for sure.
And do you feel like a Canadian and a British? I don't know if you define yourself that way, but do you feel more American now that you've been living in LA?
So it's a really interesting question, and thanks for asking. I think all are true. I think because my family, my mom and my brother, and certainly my wife's family as well, like her sister and their family, my brother and his family, and everyone, our nieces and nephews, and they're all in Toronto. They're all in Ontario, and so it is very much still a home for us. Our heart is there, and California has been incredible to us. We've been here for quite some time now, and I'm deeply grateful for the opportunities that California has offered us. Well, since we've been living here, and I wouldn't change it. I'm grateful for both. For different reasons, and yeah, certainly grateful for both, and also for the UK, for being born in the UK. To have access to, if I ever wanted to live there, that would be a true gift. But I really am thankful to have some mix from each of those countries.
So let's go back and let's find out how you got into music.
So yeah, thank you again for asking. I love this is I have to compliment you. You have such a wonderful bedside manner. This is lovely. So I got into music like right away, really early. My parents, major music lovers, having been in Britain, in London in the '60s, they experienced all of that firsthand. A lot of the music that was happening at that time, and so certainly the music that my brother and I grew up with at home was all of that cool music that they grew up with. So I feel like I got to hear all of my favorite artists starting from a very young age, and my parents enrolled me in, and my brother, both of us, into music lessons when we were super young. So it started with percussion to everybody's favorite, the recorder, and then we all moved along to the piano and played that for about 10 years, and trombone for about 10 years, and finally made my way to the guitar.
So how did the guitar come along?
All of the people that we were listening to, like my parents were listening to, was Eric Clapton, it was Ry Cooder, George Harrison, Buddy Guy, Albert Collins, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and then just the list would go on and on and on. So that was really where, I got to hear all of it. It's like, yeah, I want to play guitar. So,
So it would be correct to assume that you were already musical by the time you picked up the guitar.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I had studied Royal Conservatory piano for a number of years, and as well, like I was saying, trombone and school band. Yeah, so yeah, for quite. I didn't start playing guitar until I was in my mid-teens. I started kind of late, as some people might say, or maybe at the right age. I'm not sure.
Okay, so I wonder how your previous musical exposure through the trombone and the piano helped you in becoming the guitar player you are today, or the guitar player you started to become when you first picked up the instrument.
Right, right. Well, I'm definitely, we are all a work in progress. I'm a student for forever and always trying to get better and always trying to learn. And I think that, yeah, the piano specifically, well, maybe trombone as well, but just the idea of pitch and the idea of rhythm and the idea of timing and the idea of, groove, but really like the idea of pitch is something that I think, particularly having spent that much time playing piano, I think was really helpful.
If you picked up the trombone today, would you still be able to play it?
No, I was terrible. I was terrible. I was in the brass section in the back. I was with like the tuba guys, the baritone guys. We'd be just like fooling around back there. And then, when they knew we weren't playing, they'd be like, "Okay, you guys over there, bass clef, what do you got?" And I'd be like, like it would just sound like, dog farts. But it was, but it was a good learning experience. I could probably make an amazing fart sound with it, but I don't think I could play you much.
Well, that's something.
That's something.
Um, when you picked up the guitar, I mean, 15, 16 is kind of late, and you started playing in the bars pretty soon after. So, how did you take to the guitar, and tell me what happened once you picked up the guitar?
Yeah, well, I had always wanted to play, but my parents, they were so supportive of the music in the house, and they had saved up to buy my brother and I a piano. My brother actually went to St. Michael's Choir School in Toronto, and so we were both very active in terms of music and learning, piano lessons, all this stuff. It was part of our lives, and I think I felt bad for a while saying like, "Hey, can we get a guitar now? I don't want to play this piano, thousands of dollars." So I kind of like waited for a while, and one of the things my parents took us to see Eric Clapton play live, and he had Mark Knopfler playing second guitar, and it was my first concert I'd ever been to.
Not a bad concert to be at.
Yeah, it was superb, superb. And so that kind of lit a fire where I was like, oh my gosh, I need to learn how to play. I still remember the moments of that evening. And so I waited a little longer, and around the time when Stevie Ray Vaughan passed, I was a kid, but I was moved so much by that became really clear to me that I wanted to devote my life to continuing the message that I heard and felt in the people whose music turned me on the most. So like Stevie Ray or Eric Clapton or Freddie King or all of this beautiful music that I grew up with. There's a certain um, commitment to the music, and so I think for me, even from before I could play, it was sort of there was already a soul agreement, if you will, that this is something that I'm going to dedicate my life to, and always try and get better, and always try to spread the love and the fire that I hear in all the artists that turn me on. So I think really out of respect and gratitude for the music that's come before, and also on a daily basis, getting into the woodshed, getting into the practice room to try to get deeper and try to get better always.
I get the impression that once you committed to that, then you spent a lot of time working at the craft.
Yes, yes, and still do.
Like probably hours and hours and
Every
hours every
day,
day.
yeah, still today. I was practicing just before we got on our call here. So I love it. I don't even think about it so much like practicing. I think about it like playing. I want to play. I want to see what melodies are in there today, and I want to work on the things that I can make better today. Write a new song, something. But I think, or all of those things. But ultimately, continuing the message and the power and the purity of the music through my own lens. Of course, no one's going to be any of those people that have come before, and I do think that uh, there is something very deep and spiritual in that music, and so I'm committed to continuing that in my lifetime in my own way as I can.
part of that learning process was hanging out at the bars in Toronto
Yeah,
and seeing some of the local musicians and I guess some of the touring musicians.
yeah.
Tell me about the people you ran across and the influences or the impact that they had on you.
Yeah, that's a great question because Toronto is really a hotbed of serious musicians. Like, and I always say this, like a lot of people talk about Austin and Nashville and certain cities and things like that, and that's cool. I mean, they have some of the best to ever do it. In these that coming out of these cities, beautiful musicians, and I would put Toronto up there. I think that there are a lot of really, really beautiful artists and musicians. And I don't know if it's because of the winter that people, stay home and practice all winter or something, but there are some absolute, like, just ferocious musicians across the country. But I mean, for me, my experience coming out of Toronto, I'm thankful that I got to go and watch people, even, on a Monday night, I could go and see a player like a gentleman named Michael Keith, who's a true virtuoso player. I would go and see him a lot. I would go and see Kevin Bright sometimes, if I could catch him, another virtuoso player. And, players like Pat Rush and Mike McDonald and, obviously Jeff Healey. There were other players like Brian Kober and the Nationals that were tearing it up around town. Tony Springer, right? Like there were just seriously talented. I mean, I'm speaking a lot about guitarists, but lots of different musicians around the city, and so I feel very thankful. I'd go in a lot of times underage. Like Grossman's was really like a place that I loved to go.
Right.
So I'd go hang out at Grossman's, and I mean, they'd go till 2:30 in the morning or whatever, and it wasn't really a big deal if I was underage. I was just kind of like in there and didn't make much noise. I didn't drink, so no one really knew I was there, and I'd just be watching. Like Mike McDonald, I would watch him like a hawk. Just how is he doing that? What's he doing? And just got to learn from watching all of these awesome players.
So the other awesome player you watched and learned, and I don't know if it's correct to say he became a mentor of yours, but somebody who had you in his band was Jeff Healey. Tell me about that relationship and what you might have learned from somebody like Jeff.
Yeah. So, yeah, Jeff, I think about him every day. I think about him all the time. And his influence on me is, it would be hard to describe in words. Jeff was a hero of mine before I started playing and is one of my all-time favorite, desert island favorite guitar players, right? He's, Jimi Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jeff Healey, Eric Clapton, Albert Collins, like he's that top shelf of player. And I'm just so thankful I got to meet him. A friend of mine named Corey, who's from Toronto, and we've been friends for years. He knew Jeff really well when Jeff was first getting on the scene in the 80s. And they were friends and, hung out a lot. And Corey at some point had even, I think he brought Jeff down to Albert's Hall in Toronto when it was still there. And Albert Collins was playing that night, as was Stevie Ray Vaughan, who came to sit in with Albert, and Jeff Healey was there. And so Corey was really instrumental in, introducing Jeff to these amazing players. And they in turn recognized Jeff's gifts and were like, wow, he's one of us. Come on, and like heavyweight champ. And so Corey was kind enough when I first got on the scene. I was playing a few gigs and I had signed a deal with a label out of Toronto and was starting to kind of get moving. And Corey just was awesome. We'd hit it off. We were talking about wah pedals, and he said, "Yeah, well, I'm friendly with Jeff. Maybe I'm going to mention to him about what you're doing." And I was like, "Oh, wow, really? Wow!" And so anyway, he did mention to Jeff, and one day Jeff came out to a gig, and I didn't know he was there. Things like that. And so I was starting to get really, like pinching myself. And so one night we ran into each other in Kensington Market in downtown Toronto, and we both went into a club and we sat in together for the first time. And Jeff grabbed a bass, which was weird. And he said, "Philip, I want you to play guitar. Go play some stuff. Let's go." And I was freaked out, right? I was really nervous. And when we came out of the venue, we played a few songs, like Willie Dixon or Robert Johnson and, Cream influenced songs. And we played for a while. I came out and he said, "Hey man, you want to join my band?" And I just about passed out. But other than that, and I was freaked out, and he just said, you know what I'd like to do is have you join my band. We'll groom you. We'll teach you how to play on big stages because we play around the world. We're going to teach you how it's done, and we'll groom you and get you ready to go out on your own. How's that sound? And here I am. I was like 19, I think at 19 or so at the time. I was freaked out, like really, really excited. And Jeff couldn't have been a more incredible friend, mentor, brother, just wizard. I mean, all of the above. He gave me so much room and stretched me like an elastic. It was a really special time, and it ended up being about 4 years. And I just can't, I can't even put into words the amount of gratitude and love and respect that I have, for Jeff and how much opportunity he showed me.
I guess it speaks to you as a player that he would jam with you once and suggest that you join his band. Obviously he saw something that was very, very special in you that he thought would be worth working with, which is pretty amazing.
Well, well, thank you. And, I think I'm still kind of like, I'm still numb by it. I love Jeff so much. And, I love the gift that he was, the gift that he had, that he shared with us all. He was just a one of a kind, and, truly somebody who embraced artists that were coming up and helped them to get going. And he certainly did with me. And I know that he did with many artists that he admired across different genres of music.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that guy a lot.
I wonder if that didn't happen, if we can go back to your mindset before you met Jeff and you released your first album. Can you give me a sense of what you would imagine your career to be, or what your goals were back then?
They were, yeah. That's a great question. Thanks for asking. They were exactly the same as they are now. And I really, I was very clear on what I had dedicated my life to, and what, it's very clear, and it still is. It's like there's no blur. It's just very clear, and it's perhaps that's something, I don't know. Maybe that's something that Jeff felt that he recognized in himself as well. Like Jeff, when he played, was very clear. There was it was just get out of the way or get bowled over. So I think, and I think also having that time with Jeff, I think helped to develop maybe some additional confidence, in that vision and in the dream, in making it a reality. So I would have been, chopping away at it, either way,
So I wonder what that experience of touring around the world, playing big arenas all over the world with Jeff, what that would have taught you. I don't know can you quantify some things that you just look back and go, oh my God, what an amazing lesson this is for me.
Yeah. Every step of the way, I really was operating in a way that I was trying to be like a sponge, where I knew I was in Jeff's house. That stage every night was Jeff Healey's house. So I was a guest, and I always tried to be there to be of service. So if Jeff turned to me and said, okay, it's your turn, take a solo, even if Jeff had just played the most devastating guitar solo you've ever heard, and he's like, all right, Philip, what do you got? I'd be like, gulp, and I would just have to go for it. And that's what I meant by him stretching me. He took me out of the comfort zones, and he was patient with me yeah. I just think about, like, he would, for instance, one of my favorite memories, we went to the Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland, which is a really prestigious festival. One of the reasons I had known I was so aware of it was that Stevie Ray Vaughan had played there in the early 80s. And that's where, his career had a real lifting point from that place. But it's been a very famous international festival for decades.
Mm-hmm.
And so Jeff was playing, and it was like my first time in Europe with them. And he's like, all right, Philip, you're going to sing tonight as well. He would let me, so here I was able to sing every night for the first time and play, like really stretch out in front of many thousands of people, which I'd not necessarily had that experience in the same kind of way. So a number of things that I learned, were, even things off stage as well, like punctuality, you know, learning the songs, dressing, showing, making sure that I'm dressed professionally, ready for the gig. Just be quiet and listen. I'm the guest there. Jeff is the boss. What he says goes. What anybody else here says go. And I think really, again, just being aware that I'm the apprentice. So, like try to, and everything that Jeff did in every night, like just subtle things sometimes. Like he just knew when to tell the right joke during a live show, or he knew how to, he just, I think watching every single thing that he did over those 4 years. And I think not necessarily trying to emulate that, but trying to just use it as a guide through the rest of my life, through the rest of my career. So I don't know if that really gets to it, but then there's the playing stuff. Jeff would play and sing things, and you'd be looking at him going, how is he playing that? I don't even know what that is. Like, because he's playing on his lap, and it's impossible to try to, I'd go back to the hotel room and try and figure it out. And, so I think over the years as well, trying to pick up as many playing ideas and sort of playing inspiration from Jeff. There was a lot of that as well, but it was very full. It wasn't only the music. There was a lot off stage too that I learned.
Okay, so you mentioned about singing. I'm not sure if you get much credit for your singing voice, but you do have a decent voice as a singer.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know if you've worked on your singing as much as you have worked on your guitar playing, but tell me about the singing side of your musicality and how much work you put into that.
Yeah, thanks, Mako. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's something that, for a long time, like in a live music venue, it can be loud. And so sometimes if you just go up to a microphone and you just kind of, yeah, yeah, and kind of scream a little bit, you can kind of get away with it for a while until you start blowing out your voice or damaging your voice. You're playing 4 nights in a row and no sleep. And you realize on the third gig, like, I got no voice left. I can't, So I started doing some work with a vocal teacher, actually out of Toronto. His name was Bill Vincent. And he had worked with a vocal coach to the stars. His name is Seth Riggs. And he had learned that method. So when I was living in Toronto, I had worked with him. I think he was also working, maybe he worked with some other people that were working with the Jeff Healey group, maybe Amanda Marshall, maybe I can't remember, but he was a very talented vocal coach. And so I worked with him for a while. And then when we moved out to Los Angeles, I started working with right at Seth Riggs' home, like in his home, with an instructor named Chip Hand. And we were working on all kinds of crazy warm-ups and things. And so I work on those as often as I can. If I'm in the car before a show, I'll try to warm up as best I can, because it's a different kind of like, you can blow your voice out, right, in a very different way than you can, say, from if you're a drummer and you're just playing the physical drums or the physical guitar. I think the voice is a little more sensitive, so you can't just turn it up like a guitar amp. You gotta take good care of it. And at a certain point, if you hurt it, it's diminishing returns. So I think, yeah, vocal exercises are very important to me.
And so I know you work very hard at your guitar playing, and you practice hours and hours a day, and have for many, many years. Does that same discipline go into your singing?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, it does. I'm not going to sing as long every day as I would play, right?
Right.
So maybe I will sing for half an hour each day. Or if I'm going to be in the car, then most times if I'm alone in the car, I will bring the vocal warm up. So if I have a 20-minute drive somewhere, I'll be in there just and it's kind of like doing your push-ups for the day or something. So yeah, I think it's something that, again, I continue to work on, continue to develop, and I'm a student of music, always working at it.
Okay, so while you're with Jeff, now you're working with a band that's at a different level, a bigger level, with the machine behind it, the business of music. What did you learn about the business side of music while you were there? Or did you just treat it as a learning experience from a playing standpoint? Did you get much exposure to the business side of things? Did Jeff give you advice on the business side? Because I think he had some very strong feelings about that side of the business.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And again, just great question, Mako. And so Jeff and I personally didn't talk about business. He would come to me from time to time and say, like I remember it clearly. We were on a bus somewhere out west in Western Canada, and I think he said, Phil, you know, I think it might be time for you to jump out of the nest soon. What do you think about that? Like he was like, I think you're getting close here. It might be time for you to get going, my friend. Like not like I don't want you in my band, but I think we're ready to, get. I just thought, like, I never forget that. Like that would be as far as the sort of business end of things would go between Jeff and I. I was managed by Forte Management, who was their management, Amanda Marshall's management, but I didn't talk with Jeff about any of those kinds of things. Him and I were strictly musical or telling jokes and having fun. And but certainly, there were certain things that were going on with the management. We had started to do some work for my career with Atlantic Records out of New York. Um, did which was when I started coming out to Los Angeles and doing some more writing and recording. Um, and so, yeah, in terms of the business, I did learn a lot. I mean, I learned about some things that maybe I would do, and other things that maybe I wouldn't do. Um, but really, I had learned a little bit before that. I had signed a record deal pretty much coming out of high school. Is like I'd played one or two gigs and was offered something, and I didn't know any better. And it was a really good opportunity. I'm very thankful for it. But I think from that, I learned a lot about the business. Um, and then moving in with Jeff Healey and the group, I guess um, there was a sense that I'm trying to figure out how to word this. Um, the first business experience that I had on my own didn't feel that great. Um, I think moving forward from there, at the time it was very exciting, but contractually became a bit of an issue, which my parents helped me get out of, and we had to deal with some of that. Um, but in terms of moving forward, my focus was with Jeff, the business, kind of getting training, getting myself ready, and then yeah, and then moving on from there. So I don't know if it answers it
Yeah, yeah.
directly, but
I wonder when he said maybe it's time for you to leave the nest. How did you feel about that? Did you inside feel that maybe it was time for you to pursue your solo career, or what were you thinking at that point?
yeah, exactly. I mean, it was I had been working with Jeff for about 4 years, um, and I think, yeah, I think it was becoming clearer that I was ready to go out, more ready to go out on my own. And Jeff never, like, he would never try to change me into just being a side person. He knew that I wanted to go and was training to go, and so he was just like, hey, man, I took it as a pat on the back and like a vote of confidence.
So at that point, you decide to move to LA,
Yeah.
or soon after you moved to LA. What was the thinking behind that? Was it necessary for your career, you think, that you got into the American market, or what was the thinking behind moving to LA?
Yeah. So, as best as I can remember at that time, so with Jeff, like we would go and have these incredible experiences around the world, Europe, South America, across North America, US, Canada, like all different places, UK. And then a lot of times, I'd come like, and I saw that there was a huge market for roots music, this music that I love, that I grew up loving, that I devoted my life to. Huge audience for it internationally. And and then I remember, I would come back to Toronto and I'd be trying to like get something going on my own. And it was always like there was always some kind of reason why somebody wouldn't, get involved. Oh, it's blues. We don't look at blues, or oh, it's blues, or oh, if you change, we'll work with you. And then I would go out and do a gig with Jeff, and we'd go to Europe, and then I'd sing a couple songs or whatever, and then there'd be an opportunity for me to go out and do things on my own there. But then I would come back and try and get it going in Toronto, and it was really frustrating. It's kind of like, whoa, wow, like I'd like to get some lift here, and it was just kind of, it felt like the ceiling was really low. And so um, that was frustrating. And I know that Jeff had to leave Toronto to get and something going on. He was around playing for people, and they would come down and see him, record labels, and they would say, "Where's the gimmick?" If you could even believe it, in the '80s. And he then went and played in New York,
Hmm.
signed instantly by Clive Davis, and became a star, right? So, and I'm not saying that as like it's not the same for everyone, but the limitations were really bothering me. And it was upsetting. And I'd started working with like Marty Fredrickson, a producer in LA, and Mike Bradford in LA. And they were like, dude, you just need to come down here and get to work. Like, so I think it was really kind of an amalgamation of things, not really being able to get any attention from the Canadian industry in Canada, or very little. And then I think, the opportunity to come to the US and work with some really amazing people. And yeah,
And then you moved down there, and then you wind up working with Uncle Cracker and also Melissa Etheridge. I presume partly because you were in L.A.
that's right. That's exactly right. So with Uncle Cracker, he at the time had this cover of Dobie Gray's song called "Drift Away,"
Great song.
and it was huge that year, right? It was like it was it was coming out of the ground. It was coming out of trees, like it was everywhere. And Mike Bradford, a producer who I connected with and had worked with, he said, "Look, Uncle Cracker needs a guy that can play and sing. Do you want to do it for a little while?" And I was new in LA, and I said, "Yeah, sure. I mean, we got to pay rent. I don't know anyone here. Like, let's go." And it turned out to be that he had this huge hit, so it was really exciting at the time to experience all those nighttime shows, like the whatever Leno and whatever was on at that time. And I think traveling in that way when an act has that kind of a number one buzz for, I think it was 28 weeks or something. It was like
Wow.
really quite an experience. Like I'm grateful for the experience. And he was a real pleasure to work for, and I'm thankful for it. Yeah, and that led to the Melissa Etheridge. Well, they weren't connected, but the Melissa Etheridge opportunity opened up, and much like with Jeff, Melissa's somebody that I really respect as just a very dynamic artist and one of a kind singer, very unique. And in some ways, she has some of those qualities that, like when Jeff would walk on stage and everybody would applaud, and he'd play two notes or something just to make sure the whole place would go silent. Like they'd be like, "Ugh," like, and Melissa had a similar effect on people too, right? Where she could come out, people would go crazy, and then you could hear a pin drop, and she would sing something, and the whole place would start crying. Like it was, she just had this kind of this power and this energy, and has, I should say, but so yeah, it was a real amazing experience to work with Melissa. We got to play at the Oscars. I mean, she won an Oscar that night, this song we played on, and it was like there were Grammys, all this like fun high end stuff that she was doing because she's just like a musical icon. And so it was, again, very much like Jeff, a real opportunity to stretch and grow and learn from somebody who is a master in their world. And I'm very thankful for it. So that was 4 years with Melissa.
I was wondering, your guitar playing or your playing style, I would imagine, would have suited more of the Jeff Healey band. When Jeff said, "Do your thing," it was closer to what you do. I'm not sure if that's the same. One can say the same thing when you worked with Uncle Cracker or with Melissa Etheridge. Not to say that it's not the same music, but I don't know if it's. I just get the impression that your playing might have been a little different or more reserved under those other circumstances. Am I correct to say that?
So, maybe in the Uncle Cracker situation, but he gave me times to like, wind out a little bit. He was cool, he was really friendly. And I also got to sing on the gig a little bit, which was fun. With Melissa, she was so generous on that gig. I mean, she would let me play like for 20 minutes straight solo sometimes. Like it was crazy. And then she started on her record. No, I mean, in a good way. It was so exciting. And she, like her shows were 3 hours long every night. Unbelievable. Like she's just like a marathon runner. And so it'd be hard to keep up with her. And sometimes like 2.5 hours deep in the show, she'd be like, "Okay, Philip, go," and I'd be like, "Okay, I gotta go. I gotta, kind of get the energy up because and she was like the Energizer Bunny, right? So it was like, but I was always excited and honored, and she started writing songs that were intentionally written to create space for me to play on. It was like we made a record together called The Awakening, um, and that was such a beautiful experience, and it's a really, I think, a really deep album for her, like really special, emotional, special time in her path, I think. And yeah, she would write songs and just say, "Yeah, this is the part in the live show where I want you to play for as long as you want, and when you're done, just look over and give me a nod." And it would be like, "What?" Like, "This is amazing, thank you." And so yeah, she really, and also while that was there, same thing I was saying like with Jeff, is that never forgot that that was her house. Like, there were butts in the seats, so to speak, because they were there to see Melissa Etheridge. They weren't there to see me. It was like she sold those tickets. So I am a guest in Melissa's house and her stage. So if she wants me to kind of go and we, play a little while, I'm going to do it. I mean, of course, I'm going to keep one eye on her in case she wants to change it up or whatever. But she's the captain of the team, so I just was trying to do the best that I could to make it the best experience for the people at the show and certainly for Melissa.
It's interesting because Jeff wasn't really known for writing his own songs,
Hmm.
but he had the ability to take somebody else's songs and make it his.
Oh yeah.
Melissa is a great songwriter who has amazing songs of her own and has continued to write great songs.
Hmm.
What what did you learn from that experience of playing with Melissa? Like, what's the greatest lesson you might have learned from that?
You know, one of the things that I love so much about Melissa is her encouragement to accept and to really encourage. I'll speak for myself. I don't speak for anyone else, but for her to encourage me to be who I am and to, if I want to be freaky, be freaky. You just be whoever you are. You do whatever you want, and like, just just really to embrace the truth within, the truth of who I am, the truth of the love that I feel for this art, for this opportunity to connect with other people energetically, spiritually. I think really, again, in some ways, like Jeff, maybe finding somebody like where we had some things in common at our core. Like there were some key values, or some key connectors that really helped to bond us, like things that maybe weren't just musical or technical. There were other pieces about that. And so I really feel as though Melissa was somebody who encouraged me to, that it was okay to be who I am, like, and she was like that with a lot of people, like in all walks of life. And so I really appreciate with her, a lot of the like sometimes just our personal conversations. She's very powerful person, very inspiring.
So you leave her band, and I don't know the circumstances, but now you start to concentrate on your solo career. You've played with a lot of different people. Do you know who you are as an artist at this point when you come out on your own?
It's a great question again. I think, as best as I could for that time, for 2010, in 2009, I think, whenever that was. And I think, when the Melissa Etheridge opportunity had come up, um, I had recorded a record of my own that was called Peace Machine, and I had been selling that on the road. So we would say, get into, you know, okay, we just pulled into Cleveland. All right, cool. I'll see you guys in a bit. I got to go to the post office. I'd go straight to the post office and like mail out like 20 CDs that day or whatever. And it was like kind of double dipping, right, on the Melissa gig and my own gig. But it was, so I've always been aware, like always, my goal is to be doing my own thing. I think these opportunities came along as wonderful apprenticeships, if you will, to learn. And so I was always aware that, always had my finger on the pulse of doing my own thing. So yeah, there is a slight, there is a slight updating that has to happen. I've read other artists say things like, that have played for really big artists and then go and do their own thing. Like one of the things you notice right away is the travel changes significantly. So you go from, like with Melissa, flying private to almost walking from gig to gig. Like really, it becomes like getting into the worst broken down van you've ever seen in the middle of winter and driving, just it's yeah, when you could be in a bus laying down in your bunk with private catering and oh, we're at the Four Seasons, okay, it's like very very different experience. That was like a culture shock unlike anything that I could explain, but also I've been aware of it because I had been playing my own gigs, and doing some touring alongside. If Melissa was off the road, then I'd be out doing my own thing. So long story short, I think always aware of doing my own thing. And as much as you prepare, I don't think there's any way you can prepare for, when you jump out on your own. You just gotta jump out with no net and go for it.
And do you have a clear idea what you want to achieve on your own? Like, when you work with people of that caliber, whether it be Jeff or Melissa, and tour at that level,
Mhm.
and when you're used to doing that for several years, does that become a goal of yours, or it has nothing to do with that? It has to do with making the music that you want to make.
Yeah, I think both are true. I think certainly on one hand, I mean, the most important part of it for me is the expression, is the music. Um, and I think that, having some of those um, niceties or some of those, let's say the abundance, the expansion to be able to travel in a way that's sustainable is something, it doesn't, I mean, no one's going to say no to staying at Ritz Carlton's every night. Like, no one's going to say no to that. And I think the days of that for a lot of artists changed between 2010 and 2020 as we had the advent of sort of streaming come in and, basically turn the entire music industry upside down. So even the bigger acts that for a long period of time were touring in a more, kind of majestic way, this really fancy way, they're not doing it as much because there's just not as much money out there unless you're Coldplay, So I think it's a lot of shifting factors. I have no problem with traveling in a comfortable way, for sure, in a sustainable way.
I recently interviewed Fred Mandel, who you play with every so often, I believe.
I was waiting for you to bring him up.
Um,
I love that you brought him up. Love it.
and obviously somebody who has, like yourself, played with some very high level musicians.
Yeah.
What do you think about? I asked Fred this, and I'm not sure if it's fair to ask anybody these questions, but what do you think it was about you that people like Jeff, people like Uncle Cracker and Melissa Etheridge saw in you that said, I want Philip to be in my band?
It's a great question. I think they knew that I was really serious, just really serious about the music. Um, I think as well that there was no misunderstanding about, that like, yeah, there's no misunderstanding that I'm in their house. I always tried to approach it from a place of respect. I think there's true admiration for these artists, true respect and admiration for their accomplishments, but also for their gifts and their musical abilities. So I wanted to be there to learn. There was an enthusiasm, and I think a level of professionalism where if you're supposed to be there at 9 o'clock, I'm there at 9 o'clock. Best I can, unless it's something happened.
Right.
But yeah, for the most, I think tried not to complain too much. All those things. I think just trying to be a good team player and listen to the captain and listen to what the captain wants and try to deliver that as a side person. But ultimately, I think it was really clear that they knew that I'm really really serious about it. Like that means something.
So I
You
wonder,
know.
speaking of Fred, and he told me you guys play together every so often, what have you learned from him?
Oh, Fred. Yeah, I just think the world of Fred. And he is not only one of my favorite people in the world, he's truly one of my favorite musicians in the world. And one thing I can say about Fred, and we've worked on different sessions together, whether he was playing on something that I was working on, or something that we know the people who he's, whatever he brings to the session, lifts the entire experience for everybody. So you could have a song and you'd be like, I think it's finished. It's great. Okay, what do you think? It's great. Hey, Fred's here. Fred, you want to just play something? And then suddenly it would be like, this is way better now. Oh, Fred. Like, I don't know what he's like. He's got some kind of crazy magic where he just like it could he just knows what to do to lift things. He is such a gifted, talented musician or an artist. So for me to talk about what I've learned from him, I think, I mean, it would be again in some ways like talking about like Jeff. When you're around somebody who is that deep as a as an artist, because he's not just a technical player. Like when Fred's playing, he's bringing things out of the air that are, yeah, they're he's channeling, you know, ultimately, and he's and so I think a lot of times when Fred's playing something really meaningful, like I don't even want to play. I just want to listen to him because he's so special. And I think, you know, really just every time I'm around him, trying to learn something new, you know, and he's so humble. He's the last guy to tell you about his accomplishments, right? And then you're like, you played on the Wall? What? Like you played with Queen? What? Like that? What is happening right now? Like, you know, when and sometimes he'll just drop a weird story that you've never heard before, and it's like it's just a good reminder that yeah, Fred was, you know, Fred's the real deal. And you know, I think again about trying to be professional from Fred. You know, I think a lot of things I've learned from Fred on about being, you know, again being on time, being professional, being amicable, being a good person to get along with on the road. Um, you know, all those kinds of things. You know, I think that again there was like a real um, uh, you know, we just share a lot of common viewpoints on a lot of these things. So I think for me to be able to see someone like Fred, who has done it through his life at such a high level, he's an inspiration.
Well said. This year you released an album earlier this year, which must have been kind of weird. But what was it like releasing an album during this past weird, strange year?
Yeah. So it was definitely a mixed feeling, you know. The record had been pushed back already before. It was supposed to come out just before the COVID thing hit, like in the fall before. And the record company had decided that they wanted to push it back, which happens, you know. So it got pushed till April of last year. And so it was like, okay, well, that's fine. But then COVID crept up in late February, March for us over here. And it was kind of like, holy shit, what's going to happen now? And no, there wasn't any discussion or opportunity to update. I think with some of the other releases, they updated them and didn't. But you know, for my release, it was they thought it was best to have it continue and put it out. Um, and I think the kind of music that it is, and it's a tribute to my dad, the album. I think that I didn't really, I don't want to say I didn't care, but it was like the message of the music was more important than getting caught up in any little games, kind of, uh, you know, games with corporations. I think it just kind of became a thing that, okay, well, if this is, you know, obviously blues is not something that's important to a lot of record companies. Some of them they are, but a lot of heartfelt roots music, unfortunately, is it's not always a priority, unfortunately. And I think, you know, in having it come out and making peace with the fact that this album is really something that came from my heart, and it's something that I hope can serve as a friend for people, you know, during this pandemic. That you know, I'm not going to be able to go out and tour or promote it or anything, but maybe some people will hear it. It will make their day better. I don't know, or you know, if they're having a tough time and they hear a song and it's like, okay, it got me out of it for 5 minutes, you know, then that's worth it. Like let's, you know, let's have it out. Let's have it out there. Let's see if we can put something good into the world with this. And so that became the focus and the intention, over and above anything else. Like, how can I be of service with this music? How can I how can I try to brighten someone's day?
You mentioned that it was a tribute to your dad. Can you tell us a little bit about your dad and what an influence he's had on your musical career?
Yeah. Pretty much everything that I listen to is because of him and my mom. And all the guitar love and all that. Yeah, I mean, music love, all the artists, all the came directly from the music that we grew up listening to as a family. And um, yeah, my dad got sick quite suddenly, and he's a healthy guy his whole life. No smoking, didn't like to eat meat. He was like just no drinking. Was very, very fit, very healthy guy. And he got an extraordinarily rare brain disease and passed away quite quickly. And we're still getting through it.
Oh, it's great that you did this tribute to your dad. I mean, what an amazing thing to do.
Well, thank you. Yeah, yeah. I had the opportunity to play a couple of songs for him before he passed, which was certainly meaningful, and he was always very supportive of what I was doing. And my parents would come. Sometimes they would get on a plane and fly to a city that we were playing in, and come and see us, which was always really meaningful. We were really close, so it's sucked that he
Yeah.
had to transition, but we'll meet again.
Um, Musically, are you still writing these days? Is that an ongoing thing, or is that based on the next project you're working on?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So I've been writing actively over the last year. Like I'm sure anybody who has any kind of like needs a creative outlet, I hope that there's been lots of writing, whether it's our own very personal diary writing, or writing a song, or writing a poem, or writing a card, a love letter to someone. I think there's so much to pull from right now that I just, yeah, I've been writing a lot. So I think I have to be writing, and even if it's for no one else to hear, just to write it and put it on the paper. And if I go back to it a couple of days later and say, well, I don't think that's a song, but in the moment is very healing and very important to process what's going on, and try to put it into word and music. But yeah, I've been writing, and I've got a bunch of stuff that I'm really excited about recording. So I think it's just sort of figuring out how to do that in the COVID world.
Yeah, my final question to you, to do with the COVID world, but tell me, what have you learned about yourself because of this experience of being in this pandemic world?
Wow. Yeah. Mako, that's my favorite question. Um, I think that's really deep. No, I no, I mean, I really mean it, because one of the things I am committed to in my lifetime is certainly, as I've mentioned, continuing the message of this music that I love, and through my own experience, and through my own lens, through my own way. And I think having this time to strip away all of the business has really allowed me to reconnect and reaffirm and not even like renew. Well, let's say renew my vows. Like there's been an opportunity to be still, to really be in touch with that part of me that is burning as brightly as it ever has for the inspiration and intention of connecting with people through the power of music. And I think this time has shown me that no matter what somebody says, and they say, oh, you know what, you should wear different clothes, or oh, you know what, you should make your music sound a little bit more mainstream, or oh, this, that, oh, just write with someone else and we can have a rapper on the song and everything will be cool. And if that's something I want to do, then that's cool. But when I have somebody saying it because they don't, anyway, I think what I'm saying is removing the cooks in the kitchen, because when you have people, different various record labels, managers, agents, over a long period of time, that are constantly telling you that you're not good enough, that you need to be more like this other person, or this person and this person, and what you're wearing is no good, and your haircut's no good, your new song is no good unless I tell you. Like, you go through a decade of people telling you that you're not good enough unless you do what they tell you. It starts to fuck with you a bit. It really does. Doesn't, pardon my language, but it starts to mess with you. It can really destroy your self-confidence. It can, not only that, it can really blur the, like looking through the windshield. It's like trying to drive through torrential rain. you can't, the wipers are going and you're trying to get through it, but there's just so much bullshit getting streamed onto you that it gets really hard to, and a lot of people lose who they are. They lose. It's amazing. This is all the stuff that goes on behind the curtain that people don't talk about. Like, and so for me, I think really getting a good taste of that for an extended period of time from people that really had no interest in seeing me improve as an artist, as somebody expressing something very important to me, but more so as like a disposable commodity. Yeah, it hurts. And it really, if you're not careful, can impact the expression and the purity of it. So this time has allowed me to renew and clarify my vision around what I've devoted my life to, and to be extremely careful with who I'm going to be partnering with moving forward. That, this needs to be I need to be very discerning and have very good boundaries moving forward. There's a lot of personal growth that I've experienced through this time. And in turn, that has been reflecting the music that I'm writing and the things that I'm practicing and singing at home.
I would imagine, I get the impression that you have a pretty dedicated following, that you have a fan base that is special.
I hope so. I hope so. I'm grateful for anyone and everyone that is into it.
But I would imagine that gives you comfort at times when it's not about the business, but people who just purely love what you do as a guitarist, as a singer, as a songwriter.
It's an enormous privilege in my lifetime to have the opportunity to express this music that I love and express things that I'm working through in my lifetime through music. What a privilege. And to have somebody take the time to listen to it, or such as yourself, to ask such wonderful questions and take the time to have this conversation. I mean, it feels really good. I feel really thankful. So I want to make sure I'm mirroring that. I want to make sure that I'm returning that, the best that I can through the music or through an example in a day-to-day experience.
Well, Philip, we have never met, but it's been quite an honor just to spend the last hour with you. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, Mako, it's my honor to spend this time with you. Thank you very much.